Could someone please escort that woman out? Lauren's voice cut through Oak Ridge Hall, sharp and polished. The kind of tone people use when they believe they're untouchable. She doesn't belong here. The chandeliers above us glowed warm and steady. Italian marble cooled the soles of my flats. Somewhere behind me, a fountain hummed softly. This place, every beam, every arch, every inch of it, existed because of me. And yet, in that moment, I stood perfectly still, clipboard in hand, while my sister pointed at me like I was a stain someone forgot to clean. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I simply watched. Laura stood at the center of the room, heels clicking with confidence, her arm looped through her fiancé's. Behind them were his parents, the Harringtons, old Charleston money, pressed linen, measured smiles, eyes trained to evaluate without ever appearing rude. People like them didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. Their silence carried weight. The front desk assistant looked from Lauren to me, visibly confused. I wasn't in uniform. I didn't look lost. Still, the word homeless hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. I could have ended it right there. One sentence would have done it. I own this place. But I didn't, because Lauren knew exactly who I was. She knew this was Oak Ridge Hall. She knew I built it after my husband died, loan by loan, year by year. She knew every chandelier approval, every permit battle, every sleepless night. And standing in front of the Harringtons, she made a choice. She chose to pretend I didn't exist. "That's the terrace," she said brightly, already turning away from me, sweeping her arm toward the windows. "I'm envisioning a champagne wall there. Something elegant, understated, but unforgettable." Unforgettable. The word nearly made me smile. As they followed her deeper into the hall, I remained where I was, invisible in plain sight. Helen, my operations manager, caught my eye from across the room. Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She was waiting for my signal. I gave none. Lauren's laughter floated back toward me, light and rehearsed. She was performing, and the Harringtons were watching closely, nodding, approving, absorbing the image she wanted them to see. Not a sister with roots, not a woman who built something real, just a harmless nobody who had wandered in by mistake. I stood there long after they disappeared down the corridor, the echo of her heels fading into the polished distance. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, hair pulled back, black blouse, calm expression. That wasn't ignorance. That wasn't confusion. That was betrayal, delivered with a smile. People like to believe power announces itself. In Charleston, it doesn't. Power moves quietly, attends the right dinners, donates anonymously, and never explains itself. That's how Oak Ridge Hall came to exist, and that's how I learned to exist with it. My name is Margaret Whitmore. Most people call me Maggie. I'm 52 years old, widowed, no children, and for the last 12 years, I've been the sole owner of Oak Ridge Hall. It sits just far enough from the historic district to feel exclusive, close enough to feel inevitable. Weddings, fundraisers, corporate galas, charity auctions, they all pass through my doors. Few ever ask who owns it. Fewer still care. That anonymity wasn't an accident. After my husband passed, sympathy came in waves. So did advice. Everyone had opinions about what a woman like me should do next. Sell, downsize, travel, remarry. I did none of it. I took the insurance settlement, combined it with my savings, and bought a crumbling property no one else wanted. I learned zoning laws, negotiated with contractors, and sat through city council meetings where men spoke over me as if I were furniture. Oak Ridge wasn't built on ambition. It was built on stubbornness. When the doors finally opened, I made a decision. My name would stay off the website. I wouldn't give interviews. I wouldn't play the role of successful woman for anyone's comfort or envy. I let the work speak. That choice bought me peace and distance, especially from my family. Lauren loved proximity to things that shined. She loved saying we when she meant you. Early on, she brought friends by Oak Ridge, introducing me as someone who helps out. I let it happen. Correcting her always led to sulking, accusations, tears. Silence was easier. Silence kept the peace. Helen Brooks was the only one who knew everything. She came to Oak Ridge during the renovation phase, sharp-eyed, efficient, unimpressed by titles. She never once asked why my name wasn't on the door. "You don't need the spotlight," she told me once. "You need control." She was right. What Helen didn't know, not fully, was how practiced I was at disappearing. Growing up, I learned early that taking up less space meant fewer consequences. My parents praised reliability, not excellence. Lauren was celebrated for dreaming. I was valued for fixing what broke. By the time Oak Ridge became a success, I'd already mastered the art of standing just outside the frame. That afternoon, as I walked the halls after Lauren's visit, staff greeted me warmly. Vendors nodded with respect. Everything functioned because I designed it to. And yet, a single sentence from my sister had erased me in seconds. I paused near the ballroom doors, resting my hand against the cool wood. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was recognition. The kind that comes when something you've always sensed finally steps into the light. I hadn't been back to my parents' house in nearly 6 months. Not because of distance, but because I already knew how it would feel the moment I stepped inside. Some places don't welcome you back. They test whether you're still willing to play your role. Evelyn opened the door before I could knock twice. She wore a soft smile and pearl earrings, her hair perfectly set, as if company were expected rather than family. "Maggie," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "You're still wearing black. You know, a little color wouldn't hurt you." "I'm fine, Mom," I replied, stepping inside. The house smelled like roast chicken, buttered corn, and sweet tea. Southern comfort, carefully prepared. Richard was already seated at the dining table, eyes fixed on his plate, chewing slowly as if food required his full concentration. He glanced up briefly, nodded, then returned to silence. And then there was Lauren. She was stretched across the love seat like a magazine spread, legs crossed, phone in hand, dressed for an audience that wasn't there. When she saw me, her mouth curved into a familiar half smile. "Well," she said, standing up unhurriedly, "look who finally decided to show up." I took my seat without responding. The table was set with Evelyn's good china, the kind reserved for holidays and conversations no one wanted to have. That should have been my first warning. Dinner moved with practiced ease. Evelyn commented on the humidity. Richard mentioned traffic near the bridge. Lauren scrolled, occasionally snapping a photo of her plate, angling the camera so I wasn't in frame. I ate quietly, every sense alert, waiting for the turn. It came when Lauren stood and lifted her wine glass. "I have something exciting to share," she announced, beaming. "My birthday's coming up, and it's going to be unforgettable." Evelyn leaned in immediately. Richard kept his eyes down. Lauren launched into it. Live jazz, rooftop views, imported florals, a guest list curated for maximum visibility. She spoke quickly, confidently, like someone used to being indulged. Then she dropped the number. $165,000, she said lightly, as if discussing the weather. My fork paused mid-air. She turned to me and smiled. "And you're going to make it happen." The silence that followed was complete. Even the ceiling fan seemed to slow. "I'm sorry," I said evenly. "What?" Lauren laughed. "Oh, come on, don't act surprised. You're good at this kind of thing. And it's not like you don't have the money." Evelyn's voice slid in, soft and soothing. "It would mean so much to your sister, Maggie. You've been very fortunate. This is a chance to give back." I looked at Richard. He didn't look up. That was the moment it settled into place. This wasn't a request. It was a conclusion they'd reached without me, long before I arrived. I wasn't being asked to help. I was being assigned. I set my fork down carefully and pushed my chair back. "I need some air," I said. No one stopped me. Behind me, Lauren's laughter resumed, light and victorious, as if something had already been won. The porch light flickered on as I stepped outside, though the sun hadn't fully set. Charleston evenings have a way of pressing in on you, thick with humidity and memory. The air smelled of jasmine and cut grass, and somewhere down the block, a radio played old soul music low and steady. I gripped the wooden railing and leaned forward, breathing slowly, deliberately. Inside, forks clinked again. Lauren's voice rose, animated, already moving on to another story. No one came after me. No one ever did. I wasn't shaking. That surprised me. For years, moments like this would leave my chest tight, my thoughts racing with explanations I never spoke. This time, there was only a calm, heavy understanding settling into place, like finally recognizing a tune you'd been humming your whole life. I replayed the scene at the table in my head, not the words, but the certainty behind them. Lauren hadn't asked if I wanted to help. Evelyn hadn't asked if I was comfortable. Richard hadn't asked anything at all. They'd simply assumed my compliance, the way you assume the sun will rise, because it always had. Every family has roles, whether they admit it or not. Lauren was a dreamer, the one whose desires were protected at all costs. My parents rearranged their lives around her potential, her image, her future. And me? I was the buffer, the fixer, the one who absorbed impact so others didn't have to. I'd pay for emergencies, smooth over mistakes, written checks to preserve peace. Each time, I told myself it was temporary. Each time, the expectation grew stronger. Inside the house, laughter broke out again. I pictured Lauren lifting her glass, already basking in the celebration she hadn't earned yet. I imagined Evelyn nodding along, proud of her youngest, comforted by the belief that everything was handled by me. The realization didn't hurt the way I expected it to. It was quieter than pain, more precise. I wasn't their daughter in that moment. I wasn't their sister. I was a line item, a resource they believed they had access to simply because they always had. A car passed slowly on the street, headlights washing briefly over the porch. I straightened and glanced toward the front door, half expecting Richard to appear, to say something meaningful at last. He didn't. The door stayed closed. That was its own kind of answer. I thought about Oak Ridge Hall, about the years I spent building something that belonged to me alone. No one handed it to me. No one funded it out of obligation. Every decision was mine, every consequence earned. In that world, respect wasn't demanded, it was required. Inside that house, respect was optional, conditional, transactional. I let go of the railing and stepped down off the porch, moving toward my car. The night had cooled just enough to breathe. As I opened the door, my phone buzzed once in my pocket. I didn't check it. For the first time, I wasn't calculating how to explain myself or how to make it easier for them to accept my boundaries. I wasn't wondering how much silence would cost me this time. I already knew. The truth followed me home, steady and unrelenting, settling into the passenger seat without a word. I didn't try to push it away. Somewhere between the house I'd left behind and the life I'd built on my own, something shifted. And once it did, there was no going back to pretending I didn't see it. I was home for less than an hour when Helen's name lit up my phone. "Check Lauren's story," she texted. "Don't comment, just watch." I already knew it wouldn't be kind. Still, I opened the app. The screen split in two. On one side, Lauren sat in a velvet chair at a downtown lounge, champagne flute raised, makeup flawless, light catching her cheekbones just right. On the other, a grainy clip of my driveway played on repeat. My car pulled in slowly, its older paint reflecting the porch light in a way that made it look practical. The caption read, "When your sister has money but lives like she's hiding from the world." I felt my jaw tighten, not from surprise, but from recognition. This wasn't impulsive. It was curated. The comments came fast. "That house looks depressing. Why does she dress like she's in mourning? At least Lauren knows how to live." I stared at the screen until the words blurred, then set the phone face down on the counter. My kitchen was quiet, clean, untouched. A glass of wine sat where I'd left it, untouched as well. I could have ended it in minutes. Screenshots, property records, articles. A single post would have rewritten the narrative and humiliated her right back. The tools were there. The temptation was real. But public battles have a way of turning truth into spectacle. And spectacle always favors the loudest voice, not the strongest position. Helen called a few minutes later. "Say the word," she said. "I'll handle the rest." "Not yet," I replied. "Let it sit." She didn't argue. She understood what most people didn't. Reacting too soon would give Lauren exactly what she wanted. Proof that she could still pull me into her orbit, still make me dance when she snapped her fingers. I poured the wine and took a slow sip, my eyes drifting toward the window. Outside, the street was calm. No audience, no judgment, just space. Lauren thought exposure was power. She thought embarrassment would corner me into compliance. What she didn't understand was that silence, when chosen, is a strategy. If you were in my place, would you speak out immediately or wait until the truth can no longer be ignored? Like, comment, and tell me what you do, because what comes next would change everything. I picked up my phone once more, not to respond, but to save the story to my records. Then I turned it off completely and let the room settle back into stillness. For the first time that day, my breathing slowed. I wasn't retreating. I was repositioning. And Lauren had no idea how dangerous patience could be. Evelyn never called before showing up. She believed motherhood granted permanent access, no appointment required. When Helen's voice came through the intercom, careful, measured, I already knew who it was. "She's here," Helen said, "and she brought food." Of course she did. Evelyn swept into my office 10 minutes later, carrying a foil-covered pie dish and a leather tote that bulged at the seams. She looked around as she always did, taking inventory. The desk, the artwork, the windows overlooking Oak Ridge's front lawn. "I thought I'd surprise you," she said cheerfully, setting the pie down. "Apple, your favorite." "It was," I replied. "When I was 12. She smiled as if that detail didn't matter and sat without being invited. From her tote, she produced a thick, cream-colored envelope and placed it neatly on top of the pie, smoothing it with her palm like it might wrinkle. "I brought something for you to look over," she said lightly. I opened it and felt my throat tighten. Inside was a printed breakdown of Lauren's birthday event, vendors, timelines, deposits. Halfway down the page, highlighted in pale blue, were the words, Financial Guarantor, Margaret Whitmore, confirmed. Confirmed by who? I asked. Evelyn waved a hand. Don't get caught up in semantics. This is just how these things work. No, I said evenly, it isn't. Her smile thinned but didn't disappear. Sweetheart, Lauren doesn't have that kind of money. And your father and I are retired. You're the responsible one. You always have been. There it was. Not a request, a designation. She humiliated me, I said. Publicly. Evelyn sighed, the sound practiced and patient. She was being playful. You know how sensitive you can be. I stared at the envelope, then at my mother. Not the woman herself, but the space between us, heavy with expectation. I thought of hospital rooms and whispered promises, of hands brushing my hair while voices behind doors spoke of sacrifice and burden. We gave up so much for you, she said softly, as if reading my mind. This is hardly too much to ask. I closed the envelope and slid it back across the desk. I'm not doing this, I said. Evelyn stood, smoothing her blouse. I'm not asking you to decide today. I'm showing you the plan. She picked up her tote, left the pie behind, and paused at the door. Let me know if you want the planner's number. She's very discreet. After she left, the office felt colder. The pie sat untouched, its sweetness suddenly cloying. I didn't throw it away. I didn't eat it either. I simply understood with aching clarity that love had always come with conditions in my family, and I had finally reached the point where I could say no. The courier arrived just after 8, before Oak Ridge fully woke up. Helen signed for the envelope and brought it to my desk without comment. The return address was embossed in navy and gold. Harrington Group Events. Formal, confident, expensive. It's addressed to you, she said, personally. I turned it over once before opening it. No note, no greeting. Just a thick packet inside, tabbed and immaculately organized. The way people present something they expect you to accept without question. Page 1 was a cover letter, polite, efficient, thanking me for my continued cooperation. Page 2 outlined the event timeline. Page 3 listed vendors I recognized and some I didn't. It all looked familiar until page 5, where familiarity ended. There it was, my name. Not as owner, not as consultant, financial guarantor. I read the paragraph slowly, once, then again. In the event of non-payment by the primary booking party, the listed guarantor would assume responsibility for all outstanding balances, penalties, and associated legal costs. 30 business days, no exceptions. They didn't even hide it, Helen said quietly from across the desk. Lauren must have believed pressure would do the work for her, that I'd sign to avoid embarrassment, that I'd choose family harmony over clarity, as I always had. What she underestimated was how carefully I read when something threatened what I built. I didn't call her. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call the Harringtons. Instead, I reached for a manila folder, slid the contract inside, and wrote a single word on the tab. Evidence. Helen watched me, her expression unreadable. What do you want to do? Nothing, I said. Not yet. She nodded. She didn't push. That was why I trusted her. I spent the rest of the morning as planned, reviewing layouts, approving deliveries, walking the grounds. Everything ran smoothly. Oak Ridge didn't know it was being tested. It simply did what it was designed to do. By midday, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not fear, not anger, control. For years, I've been conditioned to respond quickly, to fix problems before they became visible. This time, I let the problem sit exactly where it was. Let it exist on paper, undeniable and patient. By the time I left the office that evening, the folder was locked in my drawer, not as leverage, as truth. Lauren thought she was being clever. She thought she was closing the net. What she'd done instead was put her intentions in writing. And once something like that exists, it can't be talked away. I wasn't supposed to find out the way I did. Helen came into my office mid-morning with her tablet pressed tight against her chest, her expression controlled but sharp around the edges. She didn't sit. "Did you approve any changes to the main ballroom calendar for Lauren's birthday weekend?" she asked. "No," I said. "I haven't touched it." She turned the screen toward me. Imported linens, custom lighting, a sound permit filed under a third-party agency, all approved overnight. My chest didn't tighten. It went still. We bypassed the external booking system and went straight into Oak Ridge's internal calendar. There it was, a full-day hold under a boutique event agency's name. No note, no request, no courtesy call. "She booked Oak Ridge," Helen said quietly, "without you." I didn't answer. I opened the security archive instead. The footage loaded smoothly, timestamped from the night before, and there she was. Lauren crossed a marble floor in 5-inch heels, arms wide, laughter echoing as she directed a planner I didn't recognize. She pointed toward the ceiling, the terrace, the stage area, spinning once like she was testing sightlines for applause. "This needs to feel exclusive," she said, her voice carrying, "not regional." She waved off a staff member carrying fabric samples, barely looking at her. "That's not what I ordered. Do you people read?" The woman froze for a half a second, then kept moving, eyes down. Lauren rolled her eyes and snapped her fingers at another employee. "Who's in charge here?" Helen stepped into frame then, posture straight, voice calm. "I am." Lauren scoffed. "Then you should know who I am." Helen didn't blink. "I do." The planner shifted uncomfortably. Lauren picked up a clipboard from a nearby table, skimmed it, then let it fall. The sound echoed louder than it should have. "Amateurs," Lauren muttered. "No wonder this place needs help." I watched the clip twice, not for the insult, for the pattern, the entitlement, the way she spoke to people she believed couldn't push back. "She thinks if everything's already in motion, you won't stop it," Helen said. "She thinks you won't risk looking petty." I closed the feed and leaned back in my chair. "She's acting like she owns the place," Helen added. I met her eyes. "She's forgetting whose house this is." I didn't cancel the booking. I didn't call anyone. I didn't raise my voice. I simply documented every second. Lauren thought she was staging inevitability. What she was really doing was performing, under lights she didn't know were on, in a room that had rules she'd never bothered to learn. And in my world, ignorance doesn't protect you. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was anxious, but because my mind was unusually clear. Once you stop asking yourself whether you're allowed to act, the path forward becomes painfully obvious. By 8 the next morning, Helen was in my office with a neatly organized file. Timestamps, policy references, screenshots, written statements from 2 staff members who'd witnessed Lauren's behavior firsthand. Everything aligned. Oak Ridge Hall had a zero-tolerance policy for client conduct. It always had. Harassment, intimidation, verbal abuse, all grounds for immediate termination without refund. I'd enforced it on donors, executives, even a city councilman once. I'd never imagined I'd need to enforce it on my own sister. But rules don't bend for blood. They break when you let them. "Are you sure?" Helen asked. Not because she doubted me, but because she respected the weight of the decision. Yes, I said. Proceed. The termination notice went out just after noon. Professional, neutral, citing specific clauses. No emotion, no accusations. Just facts and consequences. The agency responded within minutes, scrambling, apologetic, distancing themselves from Lauren as if her name were suddenly radioactive. By mid-afternoon, my phone rang. I didn't need to check the caller ID. Maggie, Richard said, his voice tight. Your mother's beside herself. I'm sure she is. Well, this didn't have to go this far, he added quickly. It's still your sister's birthday week. I waited. He seemed to expect something, an apology perhaps, or reassurance. I gave him neither. She humiliated me, I said calmly. She tried to bind me legally without consent. She mistreated people who worked for me, and none of you stopped her. That's not fair, he replied, but the word landed without force. I stood right in front of you, I continued, and you looked away. Again. Silence filled the line. Not the uncomfortable kind, the honest kind. We just want the family to stay together, he said finally. I exhaled slowly. It was never together. It was arranged around Lauren. He didn't argue. He didn't deny it. I'm not angry, I said. I'm done. When I ended the call, my hands were steady. No shaking, no second guessing, just a quiet certainty that something had closed for good. Outside my window, Oak Ridge carried on. Deliveries arrived, staff moved with purpose. Life continued, unaffected by the drama that had once felt unavoidable. I watched it all for a moment, then turned back to my desk. For the first time, I wasn't shielding anyone from the consequences of their own choices. And the relief of that truth settled deeper than any guilt ever had. 2 weeks passed without a single headline attached to my name. Oak Ridge Hall didn't slow down. If anything, it surged. 3 weddings confirmed within days. A coastal charity gala booked the entire West Wing. Helen fielded inquiries from planners I'd only ever seen across boardroom tables. People who didn't ask for favors. People who read contracts. On a Thursday morning, Helen stepped into my office with a small smile. Mrs. Harrington called, she said. She asked for you directly. I wasn't surprised. The Harringtons didn't raise their voices. They didn't threaten. They simply recalibrated. Their son's fiancé had become a liability, and they handled liabilities the same way they handled poor investments, quietly and decisively. Lauren, on the other hand, unraveled publicly. Her vendors dropped out one by one. A makeup artist posted a vague story about professional boundaries. A planner removed tagged photos. When Lauren finally appeared on camera herself, there was no music, no filters. Just her face, pale and rigid, eyes darting toward the screen like she expected interruption. She spoke for nearly 2 minutes. I didn't watch past the first 30 seconds. That evening, an email arrived from Richard. 1 sentence. I should have protected you. I'm sorry. I read it once, then I deleted it. Not because it meant nothing, but because it came too late to change anything. Closure doesn't always arrive with conversation. Sometimes it arrives with clarity. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of red wine, the air warm, cicadas humming in the distance. Jazz drifted in from a bar down the street, soft and uninvited. My phone lay face down on the table beside me. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. For most of my life, I believed peace came when people finally understood what they'd done wrong. I was wrong. Peace comes when you stop explaining yourself to people who benefit from misunderstanding you. You can love your family and still draw a line. You can walk away without hatred. and you never owe loyalty to those who mistake your silence for permission. If this story resonated with you, please leave a like for the channel. If you have advice, reflections, or your own story, share it in the comments below. Let us know where you're listening from. And thank you for staying with us until the end. Wishing you health and clarity, and we'll see you again in the next story on Revenge Story.